life energy. The combination of violence and aggressive dancing and movements, but at the same time, the ideas of unity and people sticking together, being part of a scene, picking your fellow man or woman up from the floor. That's always been what I loved about hardcore. I found that interesting as a teenager, getting into that shit when I was like 14, 15, and it's still there, and I think it's always been a part of this band as well. Musically, we deviated from that path very early and just started playing around with very different influences that were not only or only peripherally coming from the hardcore scene, but that whole idea and that whole vibe has always been there from the beginning. In the early days, we were more of a pool of musicians playing together without a firm lineup. So there were times when we had 4 or even 5 different guitar players in the band, but we would never play live with more than 2. Depending on whoever had time and was motivated enough to play, we would just play with different people. The first firm lineup happened around 2005. The Heliocentric era, which is when also Loic joined the band, was the first lineup that lasted more than like 3 or 4 years. Then Paul joined in, must have been like 2014. It was just after Pelagial, I believe. And then Matthias joined in 2015 and David joined in 2016. And since then, it's been the same people in the band. So now we're looking at pretty much 8 years of playing with the same guys. So the writing process was not very collective at all. It was me writing music. I was looking for people to share my vision and play what I wrote. The writing realm opened up as the lineup consolidated, basically. You know, when you play with the same people, spend more time together, trust them more, talk more, and eventually end up creating together. It's become more of a collective process than in the early days of the band, when the band was more of a collective than it is now.
Robin is writing all the lyrics, actually. I'm usually come with the melodies, you know, I just go to the studio and try to find my way to sing, totally like 100% improvising. I have the song from Robin and I tried a few things and I try to let it go and find a good melody, and Robin is coming with the words. And then it's the tough part, I think.
It's a very weird process how we work together in the studio. So the basic song idea is there, but then Loic takes it up completely freely and just starts singing. Vocal gibberish, half French, half English, half a language that hasn't been written yet or plotted out yet. And then I go back to his vocal ideas and melodies and lines and phrasing, and then I write lyrics over that in a third step in the process. I learned through working with Loic how it's not just rhythm that has to fit. There's so many elements to writing vocals and working with vocals. You know, certain vowels sound great while others just don't work over the same syllable. The whole sphere of meaning is important when you write lyrics, obviously, but it's also like how things sound and how they are phrased. The melodies, the phrasing, the rhythm, the sound of vowels and consonants, and some things that are just like, in theory, great, but then you sing it and it just doesn't work out. So that third and final stage of that process is the one that takes most time.
When you improvise, you're still you still work with your language, you know, the language you speak and the language you're comfortable singing in. And then sometimes you have like fantasy words that you have to make into like real words.
And they sound great.
But then you don't have the word. You're like, what word could I fit in there that somehow sounds exactly like this, you know? I think that's very difficult, actually.
The most brilliant parts on the past couple of records are just like Loic getting lost. It's not the result of a jamming in a room together scenario. That's never what this band was about somehow.
There's a lot of sculpturing in that sense, you know, like you have the main ingredients, you know, kind of where you want to go with it, but you just kind of solidify the ideas until they make sense to you.
I don't write at all throughout most of the year. I have to get myself in shape to be creative. In the beginning, it may be a bit just clumsy, but then I start getting quite productive to the point where I can write like a full 9-minute song a day sometimes, and it's finished and I'm happy with it.
For signs, for seasons, and for days. Looking for lights, burning for my life. To give a light upon the earth.
Jurassic Cretaceous on Phanerozoic 2 is a song that wasn't finished over the course of 3-4 years. Sometimes it's super intuitive and you're done in a day and you're like, that's it, you know? And sometimes you're like, yeah, this was a good song, but yeah, it's not there yet. And so I put it aside because it wasn't going anywhere. But then I would always pick it up and try to work on it and finish it. And it became that one song where I think I spent most time working on somehow. But in the end, it was eventually finished and released and kind of works out.
For me, personally, it's a lot about having the right infrastructure somehow and the right setting to be completely confident in and not having to overthink the processes, you know, like I want to be able to record any idea that comes up. I think that's when I get into this flow state most easily because I don't have to think about how to make things work anymore.
If you have a great guitar riff in your head, but you first need to go find an amp and then find an outlet to plug it, and then find a cable, and then find mics. By that time, that riff is probably gone, you know, or like you're not feeling it anymore. So having a setup is very important. And that's why we focused during the pandemic on building ourselves our little studio, which we have used for recording pretty much all of Holocene except the drums. But everything else we do at our space. Something you can't fathom with words is happening during a good show between the crowd and the band and the performers.
You're not being judged in a way, you know? It's just a sincere feeling somehow that's being shared among the crowd and the band.
A good live show to me is more like sinking in and locking in for me, because it's not like you turn on the switch and then you're there. Like sometimes it's a journey and sometimes you may be tired or just not feeling it or whatever, but if everything aligns, the vibe is there between us mostly, but also with the crowd, then you do end up locking in. You drift towards that point ideally, but
it's the same in the writing process, you know?
Yeah.
Like you can have a great idea and work on it for like 5 hours and don't really feel it in that regard, you know? But you can have a spark of an idea and then just get lost in the sauce for 8 hours and then you have a finished song somehow, you know, and you don't really know how that happened.
When I joined the band, it was way more difficult.
yeah, you were more introvert in the beginning.
Yeah. Touring with Dillinger escape plane, actually, I have to say. I was like fucking blown away every night watching Greg like getting fucking mental, and I was like, holy shit, this is insane, you know?
It was of course a process, you know, and like not trying to copy what those guys were doing, but like being infected by the energy, you know, that was happening between that band and the crowd on these two tours we've done with those guys, 60 shows in total. Watching them every night kind of just set the standards for us. Like, you know, it showed what was possible. You can do everything right and it still won't go on because there are a lot of odds, you know, and as a performing musician, one of the biggest challenges playing live is to emancipate yourself from, even if it sounds shit for me, or even if I'm having a bad day, I'm still gonna try to put myself in that space. I'm gonna do my best to put myself in that space, because I think that is a key aspect of not only being professional is one thing, but also for yourself to feel good at the end of the day.
It draws comparisons to meditation because all these thoughts that pop up, then to be able to say, okay, but this doesn't matter right now. Let it all just happen. Every expectation to play good, you know.
You give something, you get something back until everything feels really fucking good. That is the most rewarding experience.
Pillar
what we do on stage has a big influence on how people react and how they move and how they experience the show, you know. After the pandemic, it was not the same. People were much more enthusiastic and singing along, and there was just this craving for having this experience together somehow. And when you broke your legs, you know, we were touring the US and we were kind of forced to play an instrumental set without having the singer there guiding everyone somehow, you know, and we were just like, okay, how do we do this?
It's a totally different experience listening to the instrumental albums as listening to the vocal albums. And live, it's also a totally different experience. So we were just like forced into this situation, and we were like, okay, we're in the States, we're halfway through, we can't just go home now. And the first 2 or 3 shows were really rough. And then
something clicked.
Something happened.
I think we had a meeting, actually, we talked about it, like we need to step up our, I don't want to say entertainment game, but that's kind of how it felt. Like we need to make sure that there's some level of intensity as well, where we interact with the people, because
communication.
Yeah, exactly.
Little things, communicating with the crowd. We didn't do that much before. We were all just very much into our introvert little locked sphere, and on that tour we had to somehow do what normally Loic is doing because he wasn't there. And I think that made the remaining 4 members in the band stronger, and in the end when Loic came back, that made the whole show more intense somehow and better, because then it was this element that was missing was there again, and then it was like super powerful. I will agree with Paul, like after the pandemic, the shows were a lot more intense and the crowd was a lot more invested than before. Also has to do with Phanerozoic 2, I think, which we released halfway through the pandemic at a time when we couldn't tour with the record at all. And it worked out in our favor. We had more audience than we would normally probably have had, because people were sitting bored at home, and we even hit the fucking like commercial charts in Germany, the top 10. That would have never happened at a normal time. And then once we started touring again, which wasn't until like a year and a half later, we realized that this album really stuck with people, because everybody knew the songs and knew the lyrics, although we had never played a single show with it. The short European run with Psychonaut in Europe was like our first time testing these songs live. And we were like, holy shit. It's like playing like a greatest hits album, you know, but we've never even played them live once before.
My father is a musician as well, who used to play in bands, and we always played music at home. But I never really had this urge of following in his footsteps. And it wasn't until I was 15 when I started like covering songs with my friends that I really found this joy in music in the drums. You know, that was the first time that I really thought about it, like, oh, I can do this actually for the rest of my life.
I started my first band when I was 14, you know, and I try hard, but having a band in Switzerland is very difficult because the market, it's a very small market, so it's very difficult to get out of Switzerland. And somehow when I was getting 27, 28, I was like, okay, it's never gonna happen. I'm just gonna play with my friend forever, it's very fun. And then I had the opportunity to join this band and just changed everything.
I got into music early through my dad as well. He's a self-taught piano player, very virtuous, but doesn't have a clue what he's actually doing. And he taught me some basics on piano, but it didn't ignite like a desire to become a musician in me. It's always been there, but it wasn't until I was in my late teenage years that I started getting into hardcore, and I was like, I need to play in a band, and then started playing in hardcore cover bands in my hometown. After I graduated from high school and moved to Berlin, I was recording with my shitty 4-track mini disc recorder because I can
mini disc recorder.
It was a mini disc recorder. Yeah, 4-track mini disc recorder.
Wow.
And a Boss DR6 Dr. Rhythm DR660. That was you. That was when
me,
became
yeah.
you.
Fuck.
Yeah, and I started demoing shit and just got really into it, like to the point where, like, when I moved to Berlin, found myself a rehearsal place, and then all, you know, the people around it slowly gathered, and I just got lost in there. Like, I forgot what time of day or night it was, and just realized, shit, I'm hungry, I need to go out. And then you go out and you realize, oh, it's dark, but you know what happened. And
yeah, that's called ADHD. We've spent most of our lives doing it as well. I don't even think it's a voluntary process of I'm going to spend my whole life doing music. You know, I did not plan on doing this.
No, yeah, you just go with the flow somehow.
Ending up here in the studio, you know, doing an interview with you, it just gradually happened, and every single step kind of led towards being able to be creative and somehow make a living with it as well. You know, the plan was to just have fun playing music with people.
When people lose their shit, it's awesome. Then we lose our shit in the best possible way. It's still something that I immensely enjoy when playing live. Like, just the spark spills over and things go out of control in a good way. It's good to lose control, you know, it's the most liberating feeling in our very regulated everyday lives to just be able to let go and like fucking hit something. Not someone, but just like let go of that energy and like all the fucking frustration you carry around in a positive way that makes you feel better afterwards and not worse. And that's what playing live allows me to do somehow.
I think that also draws back to this like flow state experience, you know, because you as a band on stage with the crowd, you have to build up this trust somehow with each other.
Together.
Together to be able to say, hey, we are here right now, you know, the show has just started. This is what we do. And then at some point, something just clicks and flips and this guy jumps in the crowd and everybody catches them and you just somehow feel like, okay, I can totally let go now and dive in.
No children in this band.
Yeah, no children in this band, okay.
Except for us.
Yet. Oh, there's something I don't know.
Oh, reveal.
Am I going to be the mother?
I don't know what happens in your little room, but I think I should be
In your little secret room.
exactly, the little secret room. It's coming back. Hey, just breathe and let go.
Yeah, well, you kept up naturally.
Open your third eye.